You are listening to the Brand Architect Podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello there, and welcome to the Brand Architect Podcast. It's me, Anne Alexander, and today we're going to have another interview. But before we jump into that and you listen, I would really love to tell you that the Launch Your Podcast in 7 Days challenge is over, and we ended up with several people who kept the pace and actually were able to finish everything they needed to do in 7 days only. So if you have missed the challenge, and if you want to catch up, and if you're still thinking about podcasting and would love to get all the materials, all the video recordings, and all the downloadable PDFs, you can go to anialexander.com/challenge. Ani spelled ANI. And you can get everything from there. And why I'm very passionate about this is because basically based on what I have tried, and I've tried so far almost everything, the best approach and the best and fastest and most fun way that helped me grow my audience and create special relationship with them was and still is the podcasting. And it worked really, really great. And I really think that it's worth giving a try and seeing how it will work for you. So anialexander.com/challenge. Please go over there and have a look and check it out. Okay, so now let's hop on to the interview. In this one, we do discuss about engaging with your audience, growing your audience, creating your email list, and all the things that come into with it. We talk about content marketing. We talk about marketing strategy in general. And it's just a very easygoing, natural conversation, which I hope that you will enjoy. So let's jump to it straight away. Okay, so today my guest is Matthew Turner, and he's author, speaker, and brand storyteller. So that's what I've got from your website, Matthew. I'm sure that author is straightforward. Speaker, we know what it is. But you'll have to tell us what is a brand storyteller.
Well, first of all, hello, Annie. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a real delight. And brand storyteller, yeah, well, I mean, I'm a storyteller by trade. I love stories. It's what I do. So whether I'm writing fiction, whether I'm writing a nonfiction book or a blog post or working with a client, I'm always about storytelling. I'm always trying to dive in and figure out what the story is and how to best share it with the world. So brand storytelling, simply put, is, well, looking at branding and marketing with a storytelling hat on. So I will, when I'm working with clients on things like brand storytelling, or I'm coaching with people, it's all about how can you get your story across, your personal story, your brand story, your business's story, and everything, all that grey area in between, across to your audience in a way that's going to, perk their interest, keep them. Because marketing, what it comes down to, is all about starting a conversation with those you wish to start a conversation with, and then continuing that conversation, hopefully a long period of time. And I think there is no better way to have a conversation than to utilize storytelling. So that, in a nutshell, is what brand storytelling is all about. And as a brand storyteller, yeah, that's kind of what I, build a lot of my life on.
Okay, well, totally clear. I completely agree with you. I mean, stories really matter, and they work really great because people resonate with you when you're telling stories. So,
exactly.
Well, I mean, knowing what you do, I'm sort of, I've been in your place in a sense that, me too, I'm doing several different type of things. Like, you are an author and you're writing both fiction and nonfiction, and you're also working with clients on their brands as a brand storyteller. So your fiction writing doesn't really exactly is not directly linked to the other part of the thing. So how do you manage to address this? Like, do you have two different audiences, or do you link them together somehow? I mean, did you manage to find that balance among the two?
To be honest, I'm still kind of finding that balance. I'm not going to lie. I've tried several approaches over the years, and some have worked better than others. But I've tried segmenting my list and, speaking to my nonfiction fans, like those who follow my nonfiction work, like The Success Mistake on one end, and then my fans of fiction on another, and having separate Facebook groups and email and everything. And I've also tried to just incorporate everyone as one and send, like daily or weekly emails to everyone and just like, this is what I'm working on at the minute. And if you're interested in something, chime in, have a chat with me, download, click here, whatever it is that you might want to do. And I feel like there's, benefits to be had on both ends. I don't think there's a necessarily right or wrong way to go about it. But one of the things which I did find and I experimented over probably about a 4 months period where I sent pretty much daily emails to like my entire list as a whole, maybe like every other day. And I alternated the kind of topic. So one day I would focus on like what I'm currently working with fiction, and then the next day it might be nonfiction, and the day after that it might be a bit of a sort of roundup of my current blog posts. And it was interesting because I didn't lose as many subscribers as I thought. I didn't have a huge suffering when it came to things like open rates and click-through rates, what I thought. But I didn't find the engagement as much. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. I'm all about trying to engage with people. And I'm not as bothered about open rates, click-through rates, things like that. I'm more like, how many people are going to reply to my emails? How many people are, getting value from this? So recently I've gone back to kind of segmenting my worlds. I'm not working on any fiction at the moment. So that side of things is a little bit quiet while I get my successful mistake side of the worlds in order. But I've very much gone back into the world of, let's speak to my fictional fans in one way. Let's speak to my non-fictional fans in another. Mm-hmm. Give them the opportunity. So I'm making them aware of my other work here and there, but always be myself all the time. And I think that's the key. Whether I'm speaking, regarding my fiction or my non-fiction, I'm always touching upon things in my actual life. So I mentioned my better half by name. I'm always talking about my son. And I'm always talking about the other kind of work. Like if my mind's bombarded with a particular kind of book, or if I'm reading something that's inspiring me, I'm not scared to mention it just because it might be fiction and I'm speaking to my non-fiction crowd. So I'm very much still figuring out that balance. It's a tricky one indeed. But yeah, I feel segmenting it seems to bring a bit more engagement. And I suppose it's because people are just getting more relevant information that are really kind of honing on like what you're doing in a way that resonates with them.
Okay, I see. So we'll get back to the engagement because it's like a really interesting topic and a challenging one for many of us. But let's start from the beginning in a sense that let's just understand how did you manage to actually grow your audience, because we all start from scratch. So let's just go back to the time when you were just starting. You didn't have any readers, you didn't have any clients, you didn't have anyone who knew you existed and what you did. So where did you start and how did you start actually gaining people around you?
Absolutely. I'm happy to start with that. And I would like to just put a bit of a caveat forward and say if I could go back and do it all again, I would do it very, very differently. I feel like I made every mistake there was going. I tried so many different things. And I feel like when it comes to content marketing, which is all like growing a list really comes down to, isn't it? Content marketing, be it podcasting, blogging, whatever it might be. And I feel like you need really a couple of pillars there to really kind of guarantee success. And I probably didn't appreciate this in the beginning. I've been talking about this recently. These sort of core pillars that you really need to have content marketing success, I believe, starts with strategy. So kind of having a plan. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I had a universal plan back then. I had lots of little plans, and they were sometimes at loggerheads with one another, which isn't an ideal situation whatsoever. The next thing behind having a strategy is to have consistency. And that was another thing which I failed at. I would kind of really get into something and like do guest posting like a lot for maybe like a 3-month period and then not do it for 3 months and then do it again for like 2 months, then not do it for 6 months. Yeah. Similar thing with podcasting, everything like that. And I feel like consistency is key. You've got to always kind of be present, stick to that strategy, keep it going. And then the third and final thing is relevancy. And again, that is something which I struggled with, especially in the beginning, to an extent still now, because I always had this, these two paths of fiction and non-fiction. And then if you bring in the side of things of brand storytelling, which would sometimes be aligned with my non-fiction work, but other times not, the relevancy was tough because I would be speaking to the wrong people in the wrong tone at the wrong time. So I feel strategy plus consistency plus relevancy is all that you need in order to really build a list. And I was very much lacking all of those in the beginning. How I went about building my list, I just kind of tried a lot of different things. I would try guest posts, and I would look at it and think, okay, I want to grow my readership for my fiction. So am I able to get some blog reviews done? Am I able to go on to certain sort of reviewers' blogs, Amazon promotions, things like that? And they would, be slowly but surely adding a little bit of list building there on one end. But then I would kind of switch heads and go, okay, but I also need to bring in the brand storyteller side of things because I want to get those clients. So I'd be, doing similar things. It's like, can I appear on this podcast? Can I write for this blog post? Can I do this? Can I do that? And again, I would get a little bit of traction. And just as I was getting a little bit of traction, I'd be like, oh, but what about the success mistake? So I need to kind of think about that. And there would always be kind of cycles. And therefore, it's really difficult to kind of build traction in the long run of that. And it really does come down to the fact that I had too many tactical plans rather than a strategy. And strategy is a word that I think puts a lot of people off because it's such a, cliche word, business plan, yada, yada. And I don't think that's what it is. A strategy is just clearly having a bit of a mapped out direction in your head of like, this is where I am, point A, and this is where I'd like to be, point Z. I write books, I do this, I blog, I podcast, all the various things that you want to do. And it's like, here I am, here's where I want to be. And how can I best bring up with something so I'm reaching the right people at the right time in the right way, and just then bring in consistency, then bring in relevancy, and slowly but sure build traction, but do it in a way where I'm able to keep it going, rather than having to switch hats every few weeks. And that's kind of where I really want to run it. It's a big regret of mine, because if I could go back a few years to when I first started, I really would have got a hardcore on this strategy and think, what do I actually want? Who do I actually want? Do I want a universal audience where it's fiction and non-fiction in one, or do I want them to be separate? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but if you get the strategy right, you can make it work. Whereas if you get the strategy wrong, you're always going to be chasing those shadows.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because if you don't have your strategy in your mind, we all have all these shiny objects. Yep. Which definitely will drive you away from your initial plan and your initial path, and you will end up, trying. This thing worked great for someone. Let's try this. Someone else said that this is what he did, and that brought him to somewhere else, etc., etc. So, if you don't really have the strategy and the plan to where you want to go, then you definitely will have many different distractions along the way, because we all see these new things that come up, new social media channels and new ways of doing things, and everyone sort of there's very different people, and most of them usually tend to try everything. And that was one of my mistakes as well. I was like, okay, this thing came out, let's try this, let's try that, and you don't get enough traction in any of those because you're doing them simultaneously, and they are sort of for the beginning at least it doesn't work. If you already have an audience, then they will follow you wherever you go. Then it's much easier.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason I didn't kind of properly answer the question there, because I feel like I could kind of give some tips of like, oh, well, this particularly worked well for like my novels, and this worked well for like my brand story stuff. But I feel like all of that's kind of pointless unless you really hone in on the strategy, because otherwise you are going to just, get distracted by these shiny objects. And the key word I think you mentioned there was traction. It's all about building traction. And the great thing about that is that it's never too early in the process or never too late to kind of take a step back and go, okay, how am I best going to build traction between this point and the point where I want to be. It doesn't really matter whether you're, day one on your journey or, day 101 or day 1001. It doesn't really matter. You can you can start that process wherever, but yeah, it's just about aligning those three pillars: strategy, consistency, and relevancy. And I think if you can get them entwined rather nicely and singing on the same page, then it might not happen overnight, but slowly but surely you'll be getting not just that traction, but the right kind of traction.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be getting the right kind of subscriber, because it's pretty easy to bring in subscribers, It's pretty easy to kind of like build your list to 100, 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. There's loads of ways that you can go about it, but are you going to be bringing in the right people? And there's no point in just building a list for the sake of building a list. Everyone builds a list ultimately with one thing in mind. It's to be able to have a thriving business on the back of it. You want an audience so you can not necessarily sell to them, but produce what you produce in a way that's going to, keep you living. And your audience is the key in there, because they're going to be the people buying from you, sharing with your friends. Just before we hit record, you was telling me about a workshop that you went to, and a lot of people who attended were because they'd been encouraged to do so by a friend. So this guy's audience was the sales machine for him. He was like helping him through referencing. So it's all about like you're building an audience, but there's no point in just building your list to whatever side. It needs to be a relevant list. It needs to be something that's going to be engaged with you. It's going to be a list that buys from you, shares with their own friends, helps you build that momentum and keep building that traction. Because without that, what is the point of having 10,000 subscribers or 50 or 100,000? It really doesn't matter. It's about what you're going to do with that list, how you're going to engage that audience, how you're going to turn that audience into something that's fulfilling, not just for yourself and those around you, but self-fulfilling for the audience itself.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you there. It doesn't matter, the numbers don't really matter. What matters is how engaged they are with you and how much they are really loving what you're doing. So let's talk about the following. We talk a lot about content marketing and creating content in order to attract people and grow audience, and then create some more content for them and everything else. The problem with this that I'm seeing is the content and information is all over the place. So most probably you won't be able to create something totally original, like to have an idea or a strategy or something that you're sharing with your audience that won't be available somewhere else in terms of the concept itself, not the implementation part, but the concept and the information part. So I have the feeling that people are not coming to you or me or anyone else specifically just because of the content. There is something else mixed and on top of the content, like, I don't know, personality, style, whatever it is, that sort of makes them choose you over someone else who's providing similar type of information out there. So let's discuss that. I mean, what is it on top of content and information that actually attracts your audience?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question to ask. And I love how you were saying that you might be kind of worried about coming up with something original and an idea. The thing is, your audience doesn't necessarily need you to be original. They don't need you to reinvent the wheel. They don't need you to, invent something new. So you don't need to be completely original. You just need to kind of have something like, there could be a million other people who provide the exact same information as you, the same workflow, the same methodology, whatever. The way you build an audience, I believe, it isn't about what you share per se, but it's, how you share it. And it comes back to story. It comes back to like how you're going to share it in a way that's going to connect and engage them. Because remember, marketing is all about starting those conversations and keeping them going. So you don't need to produce necessarily better content than your competitors. You just need to tell better stories from them. You need to start better conversations and keep those conversations going better than your competitor. Or not necessarily better, but in a more relevant way for a particular group of people. I mean, a great example of it is, I always hated the very notion of like a sales and a marketing funnel. It always seemed so smarmy to me. And I'd kind of read the books about it and I'd seen the videos because, it's I'm educated in marketing. That was my background. So I kind of know all of this stuff. And I've come across numerous people who did it. But it was several years down the line. And then finally I connected with Scott Oldford and, he started teaching me his methodology. He's got a different twist on things. He brings a twist of Scott to the table in terms of the content itself. But it's not like he's doing something totally different to what people have been doing for years and years when it comes to marketing. But he laid it out in a way and he told the story in a way that kind of clicked for me. And I'm like, this is a guy that is engaging me, and he's kind of giving me the information that I need in a way that I need it. And it's the way that I need it that's more important than the actual information itself. So I feel when you're trying to build an audience, it's not about getting lost into, am I good enough? Am I experienced enough? Do I know enough? Like, I'm basically just kind of copying stuff that I've read in numerous other books. Like, you want to put your own twist of it. I always talk about like how I can put my twist of turn dog onto anything that I do. So whether it's a course or a book or a blog article or whatever, I'm always thinking like, can I twist it? Can I, change the order of things, change the wording, twist it? Even though it might just be like 90%, it feels like I've stolen it, Can I put like a bit of a 10% twist on things so it's a bit more original for me? But the real key to it all is how I deliver it, how I put it across in a way that is going to connect with my audience and engage them and start that conversation and keep that conversation going, because that's all it is. That's what it's all about. Because they might have been trying to learn this stuff subconsciously for months, years, decades even, but never have given a damn about it because the people who were sharing this information just didn't, play with their heartstrings. And they just needed someone to come along and deliver it in a way where it's like, this makes sense. I love this. I don't no longer see it as smarmy or horrible or boring. I actually see that there's something worthwhile in this. And that all becomes in the delivery and the storytelling. And that's why I love storytelling, because I feel if someone can really engage themselves in their story personally, their audience's story, the story as a collective, the brand and the business, and how everything meshes together, then you're just going to keep people's attention. You're going to engage them. You're going to connect with them. You're going to take them along a journey, along an experience. And that's kind of like, I think, how you build, a really great audience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. So let's talk about, we already touched base and sort of, agreed on the fact that engagement is more important than the numbers. So let's talk about how to provoke engagement from your audience.
Oh, well, that's a good question. How to provoke engagement from your audience. And I'm not going to sit here on the other side and pretend like got it all figured out and an expert, but I feel if you want to get someone to engage with you, and whether that's replying to an email, whether that's taking part in a discussion on a Facebook, engagement isn't a like or a love heart on Twitter or how many shares. Engagement is discussion. Okay, that's how I see engagement. Like, can you have a discussion with someone? And how you emote that, I think, just really begins and ends with generosity. You've got to give, and you've got to give some more. You don't only have to give content, but you've got to give yourself. And I think if you can combine being generous with your knowledge as a person and combine that with giving through transparency, so sharing your own stories, your own vulnerabilities, your own worries, like not kind of like sugarcoating it and saying I'm an expert and I don't go through any issues and stuff like that. Like if you're having a bad day, be honest about it, like share it, like be honest. You don't necessarily have to like share all the nitty-gritty details in your life, but just be transparent about the person you are and the journey you're on. And I think if you combine those two kind of givings, those two forms of generosity, then it may take a little bit of a while. The other person's not necessarily going to engage with you straight away. They're still you've got to remember, they're learning to trust you. I don't trust a lot of people online when I first come across them, Like there's a lot of stuff being thrown at me on a daily basis. I try and always put myself in my audience's shoes and think, well, every day I'm getting sold to, marketed to, bombarded. Every now and then I come across a really cool guide or a webinar or something that I think is going to be helpful to me. So I give them their email address and I know that they're going to bombard me with emails. I kind of know that, but it might be a summit that I want to attend. It might be, there's something in there that I think is going to be helpful for me. And I'm like, hey, this guy or this girl might be able to engage me, might be able to teach me something. So I download it and I give me their email address. But rarely am I going to then start replying to their emails straight away.
Oh yeah.
Rarely am I going to join their Facebook group and become a huge endorser. You know, I've got to learn to trust them. I've got to learn that they're not going to just sell to me, but they're going to provide for me. They're going to provide me value over an extended period of time, not just for a week and then place me in a sales funnel, provide me value over a long period of time. And that's difficult from, the giver's point of view, because you think, how much is too much? How long do I wait? And there's no right or wrong answer there.
Well,
You're playing
exactly.
a wait.
How do you wait? I mean, how do you, in the beginning, there is a period where you feel like you're talking to yourself because you don't get the feedback yet, you don't get the engagement, so because it takes time. So what keeps you moving forward and not giving up? Because you may start thinking like, oh, no one cares, no one needs this, no one replies to the emails. I don't have a feedback. I don't know even if I'm doing something right or not. So how do you deal with that part?
Well, there's a very different thing between, there's two sides to that. One is what you're doing and providing good enough or relevant enough? And that's, you just kind of got to have a bit of an open mind that there's always room for growth and improvement. So if you create an email like sequence, you've got to create that knowing that in a month's time or a year's time or 10 years time, there's going to be room for you to improve that and grow that. And you will just do that with time and, through experiment. So, just keep trying to get engagement and just try and sometimes do it. So like say you've run a new campaign, you have a campaign and you bring in like 1,000 people and you send them all on a sequence and you're hearing crickets, you're not getting anything in return. Spend like an hour one morning where you just cherry pick. I don't know, like maybe you delve in, you're able to see how many people open and click rate. Use those stats as a sort of base. Because if for instance, if every one of your links has like a compelling thing to click through to, and you're getting pretty decent open rates, that's telling you that, people, you're doing pretty good titles at least. So people are clicking on your emails and opening them and, reading the beginning. But if then they're not following through to clicking through, on the other end, then there's obviously a bit of a disparity there. And if throughout the sequence, as time goes on, those open rates and the click rates are like quite dramatically falling, then that is a bit of a sign of like what you're producing isn't quite connecting with them, It's not quite delivering what they need. So there's a couple of things you can do there. Change it, tweak it, experiment with different things, do another campaign, try and bring in another 1,000 subscribers and bring them on board. But if you're seeing like the numbers are kind of holding up and doing well, then for me it's saying that there's not an issue exactly with the actual content, the actual stuff you're giving, but they're not engaging for some reason. So spend an hour, try and get like 24 names together, people who have been like opening and clicking and quite often, and like reach out to them and say, I don't mean to be funny, Dave. Like, I'm just a learner. I want to know more about you. I've been noticing that you've been opening my emails of late, but so far you've never replied to one of them, even though I end each email with like, this call to action of like, hit reply, tell me what your problem is and things like that. I just want to know like, what are you liking about this experience and what not? Don't do like a mass mailing. Just like genuinely try and reach out to them. And maybe do that every week. Maybe have like an hour every Thursday morning where you're just going to reach out to 10, 15, 20 of your subscribers on a pretty random basis where all you're trying to find out is, what do you think? Like, I did a new video last week. Did you watch it? Did you like it? I'm just trying to get an idea of like if it's going to connect with you. And again, that comes with this notion of generosity, of being real to you. Like, I don't have this all figured out. I'm still learning. I'm trying to learn about you. I'm trying to figure out what you need from me. So reach out to them. That personal connection. When I've done stuff like that in the past, you're going to get replies. You're going to get that engagement. And then you can maybe carry that on going, oh, that's interesting that you say that. I've been thinking about doing this, blog post pretty soon. Do you think that would be good? And if I do it, do you mind if maybe I send it to you?
It's very interesting you said that, because I actually did it a few months ago. I sort of had 10 hours of free time. So I sent out an email to my list saying, I have these 10 hours. I can have a 1 hour Skype calls with 10 of you. Whoever replies first, whoever would like to talk to me, let's just know each other better. And what I realized, it was really, really interesting, and I'm very glad I did that, because it seemed like I thought I knew my audience, but actually I discovered so many new things. And very even surprising things. I mean, my initial podcast was called Write to be Read, and it was for newbie writers who wanted to become authors. And I ended up with one guy among those 10 who I spoke with, who is not a writer, who doesn't want to write books, and who doesn't have any interest in becoming an author. So for me, it was like, it was like the last person I would think that would be not only a listener, but a loyal listener, listening to every single episode out there. So you never know. I mean, going back to the audience and interacting with them will always give you these new feelings, and will sort of, you keep your finger on a pulse, and you don't drift away too much, and you don't make too many mistakes, because you're always in the know about what they need. I guess that's that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone should be trying to interact with their audience. And I don't think you can ever do it enough. I know I don't. And yeah, for instance, that thing, let's say you send out an invite to your subscriber list and you've got 10 free calls and only 7 of them go. Well, go on all the click-throughs, like all the people who clicked on that email, opened it, whatever, and just choose like 10 and be like, I've still got 3 left. Like, you clicked on it, you obviously were somewhat interested, but you didn't then reply to me. So, like, is the reason, like, is it because an hour is too long? If not, like, let's do half an hour. Are you worried about we're not going to be able to make our calendars line? And just speak to them and just align with them. And that way you're going to constantly learn, like, what is and isn't working. And I don't know, I feel like that is one of the best ways to kind of get your way through that silence. So you're producing content and you're hearing nothing but crickets. Well, just persist at it, and just always be under the assumption that you can get better and learn more about yourself, about what you produce, about your audience, and just be generous with them. Keep on giving them, keep on, giving yourself to them, and just reach out to them and be like, what do you like? What don't you like? Don't come up with polls. Don't come up with surveys. Be real with them. Conversations. One of the great things about having a small list is that you actually have time to speak to them on a more one-on-one basis, which you're not going to be able to do when your list is at 10, 15, 20, 50,000 strong. But the other side of things is you ask, like, as well as like knowing whether to keep going, whether you're producing is good enough, also to kind of like keep faith at it. And I think that's another really important part of it. Like, if you're going through it in the beginning and you're not getting that engagement, how long is too long? So on the one side, you're persisting, and okay, you've got to keep trying to keep that engagement, seeing what you to do is actually striking the right nerve. But if you're getting those self-doubts, okay, I've been doing this for 3 months now, I've been slowly growing my list, but there's no real traction in terms of how many people are replying. You've got to remember, you're building a relationship with your audience. You've got to nurture them, and you have to like keep looking and having a word with yourself and going, do I believe in what I'm producing? Do I believe that I am offering something that other people are not? Do I love what I'm producing? Because at the end of the day, there's 2 types of blog posts I could write as a person. I could write the blog post that I think I need to write because it's going to help, get traffic in and, hits and all that kind of stuff, but I don't necessarily enjoy writing. And then there's the blog post which I enjoy writing for me. And if people actually happen to click on it and read it, that's something else. So try and get a mix. So you're doing work that is going to be beneficial, like in terms of growing, but also work that you're doing because you love.
Okay, yeah.
And I think if you're doing work that you love and you're passionate about, it's a lot easier to just kind of, place the crickets to one side and go, you know what? I have belief that it's not always going to be like this. And if I keep experimenting and iterating and changing and adapting and interacting with my audience and finding out what they do and don't like and changing and not being, stubborn enough to not change, that it will get better. And so long as I'm creating work that I love, that I'm going to be improving my craft, I'm going to be producing better stuff.
Yeah,
and it keeps you through the tough parts.
Yeah, I agree, and it's always worth remembering that it does take time. So all those people who teach you to write a book in 30 minutes or to make 10K in 1 month and all that stuff, just I think you should ignore and move forward, because the reality is different.
the thing is, there's probably many ways for you to make 10K in a month. And there's probably some pretty proven ways to do it, where if you follow this blueprint, it'll work. But it might not be enjoyable. You might not feel good about yourself. It might not be the work that you want to do. So although there's ways to build a list, there's ways to make money, there's ways to write a book in like a day, there's loads of ways to do a lot of stuff. But it's not necessarily going to connect with you, and it's the reason why you become an entrepreneur or leave your job or start a side hustle, whatever it might be. You're doing it because there's a little bit of something inside you which wants more. So it's about trying to combine that passion and purpose, so it's leading you down the right route. Because there's plenty of ways to make money, and I believe like everyone, if need be, could make like $2,000 today if they absolutely had to, But do you want to wake up every day feeling like, I've got to make $2,000 today doing something I absolutely hate, but it's all about money? So yeah, there's lots of ways to make money and to, write that book in a day, but it's not necessarily what you're going to want to do, and it's not necessarily what you should be doing.
Yeah, true. So let's try to wrap up by you telling like how you are nurturing your audience, because I know you're doing something special for your audience and mine too, because you're on my podcast. So let's talk about that.
Well, yeah, I worked on The Successful Mistake for 4 years, basically, between like inception and when it came out. And when I released it, I realized it was like, this is day zero. Now the book is out there, but I've got to, get it in front of people, slowly build it all the way. I've got to, be more strategic with my list building and who I share it with and everything like this. And in the lead up to the book's launch, I did a fairly typical one, gave free books away to certain people and, had certain partners introduce it to, their audience. And it went okay, but I was straight away placing them into a more like sales-centric funnel, because I lost track of things. I was like, this is kind of what you do around a book launch. And, I kind of did it because I wanted to build a bit of traction with the book, and I know that this is a successful way to do things for a lot of people. But it kind of got like maybe halfway through the experience, and I wasn't quite getting the engagement and the traction that I wanted. But I wasn't that bothered, which might sound strange, but it just didn't feel like I was doing something good, And I didn't like the whole idea that I was giving my book away for free, and then like a week later, oh, by the way, you should jump on this webinar so I can sell you this. Oh, by the way, you should buy this. Oh, by the way, you should do this. And that's just not the way I want to, build my list, nurture my audience, do anything really. So pretty much once that was over, I came up with this next idea. It's like, I want to actually give people a physical copy of a book, not a digital version, like a physical paperback copy of a book. I wanted to do that previously, but just ran out of time and resource and couldn't bring it all together. So I thought, rather than giving into fear and doing what you're, air quotations, supposed to do, let's give people a free paperback copy of the book. But then let's build an experience around them that I am going to throw absolutely everything of myself in, like literally give away as much as I possibly can. Be giving both in terms of what I have to share from what I learned through the book itself, but also give, in terms of me. So you talked about, one-on-one calls, things like that, just being transparent, trying to create like a pretty damn intense experience where people are going to be getting like daily emails from me over like a 3-4 month period. But hardly any of those emails involve any kind of sale. They are just, I've produced this video series for you because I feel like this is a good extension of the book. I want you to read this book. I want this book to mean something to you, and I want you to learn. I want you to learn what it took me 4 years of interviewing people in over the next few weeks. And that is basically what I've been dedicating my recent life to, and for the foreseeable future, of just, building this experience and just being as giving and as generous as possible, because I am passionate as hell about The Successful Mistake and the content inside there. And I'm so excited about all the things that are going to come later. But rather than rushing it and saying, oh, you should buy this, and I've got this course, buy it now. It's like, no, you're not ready to buy anything like that right now. What you need right now is for me to just keep on being given. for me to just keep on being given, for me to earn your trust, because that is what I need to do right now. So that is basically, and who knows what's going to happen? It hasn't even started yet at the time of recording of this. It's going to kick off around about the end of October. It's going to be an ongoing thing. And basically people are going to get 4 months worth of what, in my mind, is pretty damn valuable content, and a lot of interactions to not just interact with me, but people of a like-minded status. And there's going to be very few actions to like, buy this, buy that. It's going to be all about, I want to give you this. I want to see how you react to it, and I want to see how I can serve, and I want to see how I can help you. So it's just a pure nurturing experience. I'm excited because I just know I'm going to learn so much about, the audience that I serve. I don't consider it like my experience. I consider it an our experience. And it's exciting because I know I'm going to learn a lot about myself during that period. I'm going to learn a lot about, how to write for people, how to provide for people. I'm going to learn a lot about the audience, and hopefully they'll learn a lot about me too. So yeah, that's something I'm really excited to be able to do, and it's going to be an exciting journey. I'm stoked.
Okay, so what do we do? Where do we go in order to get more of you and also to get the book?
Well, absolutely. If we haven't really kind of talked too much about the Successful Mistake, but I imagine you can probably put it together from the title itself. But if you just go to successfulmistake.com/Annie, so ANI, it will take you to a page which has a bit more information about the book, and there's a bit of a video on there. And you can basically get a free paperback copy. Yeah, no strings attached. And then it's all about me getting to know you getting to know me, and we'll just see what magic takes us. It's an exciting time, and for the most part, I'm all about trying to get the book I dedicated far too long on into the hands of those who need it, for them to read it, and for us to enjoy some good times.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for the interview. I really enjoyed talking to you about this stuff. And, I'm sure that we had several important points and interesting things that they should go back and think about. So, guys, I'm sure that if you go through what you're doing right now and how you're doing it, maybe looking through the perspective that we covered today will help you do things better. So yeah, we did our best, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, thank you for having me. I've had a great time, and yeah, if anyone ever has any sort of questions, below, fire at me, send me an email, matt@turndog.co. And it's just been a pleasure to be part of your show, Annie, and to have a chance to speak to your awesome audience.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay, so that's all that I had for you today. Please go ahead and check out Matthew's book, and you can get it for free, as we already spoke about. So successfulmistake.com/Annie, ANI, and you can get your free copy over there. So I hope you really enjoyed the interview. As I already mentioned in the very beginning, I'm really happy with the results of the Launch Your Podcast in 7 Days challenge. If you are thinking about podcasting, if you want to have a successful podcast and grow your audience that way, as well as make it as part of your marketing strategy for your business, please go ahead and check it out on alexander.com/challenge. Well, that was it. I hope that you're going to come back to me to listen to the next episode next week. If you have time, please leave a review for my podcast on iTunes, and I will be happy to have you over next week, where I will have another solo piece sharing your thoughts about something that has been coming up for a while. So take care and have a great week.